70,000 years ago, in the midst of the Ice Age, at a time when humanity existed as small bands of 20 to 30 people chasing after whatever food they could find, a massive volcano erupted in Indonesia. The ash and fumes from the volcano blocked out the sun for 6 years. The majority of life on Earth died. Plants could not grow. An already cold planet grew colder, and humanity was reduced to less than 10,000 people worldwide, many of whom lost everyone they knew or cared about and spent their remaining days wandering this planet alone. This is not a myth or legend or parable. This is what the archaeological record tells us. And I share it today because there are two ways to look at it, and both are true and give us guidance and insights both in how to live today and in how to read today's gospel. We can look at the plight of our ancestors and the horrors they endured. Already able to only store a little food each year, suddenly watching the plants wilt away and die, and the herds starving to death as a result, watching your family members die as well. Parents, children, brothers, sisters, and spouses until you are alone in the world, desperately trying to survive on the frozen corpses of dead animals. Not seeing the sun for 6 years, living the whole time in never-ending darkness, forgetting what it was even like to see the sun shine in the sky and the feeling of its warmth upon your face, marking your days by when the hunger drives you from your sleep and when exhaustion, stress overwhelms you. Or we can see in this story hope. As harsh as this reality was, humanity endured. Enough people survived and found one another in the vast expanse of this world that we all share about 80 common ancestors from this time period. And today, we number over 7 billion. We have grown from near extinction to the most dominant species this planet has ever seen. Not only did we survive as a species, but because our ancestors found one another and worked together, depending upon one another, learning to love one another, and rebuilding the families that were lost, we exist today. 20 years ago, when I was in college, climate change was still talked about in whispers. Controversial theory that we should know what was out there, but one which many of our engineering professors wrote off as liberal propaganda. Even 5 years ago, I attended a conference that centered around how to prepare for a future of potential energy being transformed into kinetic energy and the implications of sea level rise, more intense and frequent precipitation in some areas, more intense and frequent droughts in others, and an overall warmer planet. But we were forbidden to say the phrase climate change, because use of that phrase would mean that the chief funding and regulatory agencies would have been barred by federal policies of the time from speaking or even attending the conference. They could not express any opinions or present on any studies or even attend any sessions which explicitly addressed causes or means of prevention for the cataclysmic forces we are all facing. They could only speak to and discuss and hear about more general responses to these changes. It was a strange Orwellian experience. We all knew what the causes of the changes in weather patterns that we were already seeing were, but we were not able to use the language or talk about how to slow the changes, only how to reduce the impacts. But today, as this new reality of accelerated climate change is being seen in real time, as communities, urban, suburban, and rural, are facing weather events unheard of in the historical record, And as members of Gen Z have come to dominate on college campuses and enter the workforce, even among the engineering community, traditionally a very conservative group, sustainability has come to drive all that we do. There has been an acceptance that climate change is real and now inevitable. The world that I will grow old in and the world that my sons will grow into will be one of far more extreme weather than the one we have had over recent millennia. Tens, if not hundreds, of millions of people are going to die. And hundreds of millions, if not billions of others, are going to be driven from their homes to find refuge in those places which remain capable of supporting human life. Even today, much of the war and immigration that we are seeing, which are stretching resources and the limits of compassion of wealthier nations, these changes are being driven by this impending reality. And there's a temptation to join preppers and turn our backs upon others, to say, I have enough for myself and my family, to point to the wise maidens in today's gospel as a literal model and say that the wise should be rewarded and those foolish enough not to prepare should be left out in the cold. But that is not the meaning of today's gospel. The meaning of the gospel is, in fact, the opposite. Jesus was not talking about literal oil and the need to hoard resources in anticipation of the coming of the day of the Lord. Rather, today's gospel is about continuing to live in faith, hope, and love, even when all seems lost and we are alone. It is about continuing to love one's neighbor, even as God seems far away and to have left us to our own devices. It is about keeping the light shining in our hearts and our lives and being a light to the nations, even as darkness surrounds us. It's about knowing that humanity can endure, even when it seems all is lost. It's about knowing that we exist today because our ancestors, 70 millennia ago, chose to seek one another out and work together to survive while other species died out around them. And that is our calling, to be in community, to be in communion with one another and with the living God, even when facing an uncertain future. It's about hoping and believing that when the day comes that the world truly is at an end, that a better day awaits us all who have kept the faith and continued to care for one another, to seek justice and to love with abandon in those darkest days. Amen.